As you guys acquire your facilities, as you guys build your businesses, when things are great, don't let off the gas. Pedal to the metal, all the fuel on the fire, keep the urgency, keep the hunger, and keep pushing forward because it only lasts for so long, guys. And we want to be able to squeeze as much juice out of that as possible, right? We want to do great. We don't want to leave anything on the table. We want to put it all out there, get it all back, and be able to redeploy it. So why would you not want to grow faster, right? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Self-Storage Income Podcast. You have me, Connor Skeen, hanging out with you today, again, as AJ is hanging out elsewhere, getting things done, being proactive, making things happen out in the world, and doing a great job. So with that, we got to cover the bases, right? We're a team jumping in, helping out with the podcast here, and sharing today with you guys some key elements that have really driven us to succeed in operations in the self-storage industry, from one facility all the way up to managing our 250 plus million of assets under management currently, and growing, whether that's new acquisitions, developments, any of that. We're growing very, very quickly, and it's not by accident. It's a lot of live and learn. It's a lot of trial and error, and it's a lot of connecting with other industry professionals. It's a lot of this connection with people in general, to learn, to share knowledge and information. Like we're always talking about on the podcast, that rising tide really truly does lift all ships, right? So really, really important. So today I'm going to be doing a quick and dirty rundown of some key elements that have really driven our success. So let's kick it off with number one. Number one, we talk about occupancy as being the primary goal number one, right? Occupancy, revenue, those are the two most important things to us in self-storage, and hopefully for a lot of businesses. But one of the dynamics that we have to be careful of and that we have to think of is, I guess this is kind of a bonus piece of information here for you guys as well, is there are very rarely absolutes in business. And I think anybody that's been in and around business would agree, and in any industry for that matter. I know you hear a lot of things about the fundamentals being, just across any industry, about these absolutes of, well, occupancy is just number one, or hey, revenue is just number one, or hey, this metric is the most important thing, or you should only be looking at markets that are less than 8 feet per capita, or whatever it is. Like, there's always these quote unquote absolutes that I think a lot of us latch on to, both newcomers and professionals a lot of times. And it's really good to take a step back and actually question that status quo and say, well, is this actually an absolute or not? And this focus on occupancy is one of these absolutes, air quotes, that I want to focus on because it really truly is the most important thing until a point where it's not. And what I mean by that is it's the most important thing up until you start sacrificing revenues to drive occupancy, which you don't want to do. So a lot of times what people will do is they'll continue to drive rates lower at their facility, those street rates, right, that customers are seeing when they're on the website or they're coming into the office. They're seeing those street rates, they're seeing those prices. And a lot of times operators will keep those rates at a very, very low rate, as opposed to increasing those rates as those unit types begin to become more and more occupied. So for example, a lot of our unit types at our facilities are 90+% occupied. We're going to really go on that high end spectrum of the rate management and those street rates on that. So if our competitors are, let's say the low is $98, the median is $100, and the high is, $120, we're going to go for the 120. We're going to be on the high end. Maybe we even go higher because they have a different element to that unit that is specific, and we're extremely occupied. Let's say it's 95%. So we really play with the rates once we get to a certain level of occupancy. We don't just keep rates low. We adjust them as those occupancies increase. And that's something that you definitely want to be paying attention to as those, not only the facility, but those unit types continue to get more and more occupied. So just something to think about. Again, that's one of those pitfalls that I think some operators can fall into, where they really just want to focus on occupancy at all costs. But when you start sacrificing revenue, you think about, you could just be losing money to gain occupancy for no reason. Yet it might look great to have 90, 95% occupancy, but if you could have 80% occupancy and 25% more revenue, wouldn't you rather do that? So at a certain point in time, revenue actually is king, and that means more than occupancy does. So something really, really important to keep a pulse on as you continue to grow. Next up on our list that I wanted to share with you guys is revenue being one of the best levers to pull. Going back to some of these absolutes and fundamentals where I think a lot of people can get focused on expenses. And they want to just pull the expense lever and say, hey, we need to cut costs here. We need to do this. We need to change that. And yes, while those things can be good, one of the most important things and one of the best levers to pull in my experience working in our companies alongside all these individuals is it's far better to be pulling that revenue lever. You want to be driving revenues, again, occupancy revenue. Get the occupancy up, manage that revenue effectively as you continue to grow, and squeeze all that juice out of each and every unit type that you possibly can. And again, going back to that revenue piece, if you start sacrificing revenue to gain occupancies or sacrificing revenue to cut expenses, it doesn't make sense. So stop sacrificing the revenue. Maybe I should have just led with that. Stop sacrificing revenue. I like that. So don't sacrifice the revenue to gain something else that just seems like a good idea. And when you're making those decisions, obviously you want to make sure that all of those those decisions are being made with the information that you have on hand. Data-driven decisions, that's one of the things that we constantly talk about in the company, is we're not just, licking the finger, sticking it in the air and saying, okay, like the wind's kind of blowing this way today and, the moon rose over here, and so we're just going to cut X amount of expenses, or we're going to put rates for that unit type at X. We really want to make sure that we're making those data-driven decisions and not just guessing. Because question, how are you going to replicate what works and what doesn't if you don't have that information and how you made the decisions that you made? How are you going to communicate that to partners, to investors, to your team? All of those different aspects. It's really, really important. So for us, we want to pull those revenue levers. And on top of that, you can only pull the expense lever so many times. You can only reduce so many things. A lot of costs are very fixed. There's certain things you can finagle and really get better deals on. You can negotiate. There's ways to reduce expenses. However, pull that revenue lever. It is the way to go. Next up, number 3, we've got when times are great, don't let off the gas. And I was actually just talking to our team about this today, because it's one of those things that, again, I think a lot of us can get caught up in and fall into the pitfall of this, of just getting comfortable, right? When times are good, we kind of let off the gas, we're coasting, we're hanging out. That's not what we want to do. When times are great, it's time to double down. When times are hard, it's time to double down. It's time to be the best in class and do our utmost work to the best of our abilities at all times. It doesn't matter if it's gangbusters or if it's bad, we're doing great work all the time. And so we were talking about that today as a team, and just making sure that we all keep the pulse and the urgency and the best in class concept at front of mind in everything that we're doing. And the reason I wanted to talk about this with the team is because we have seen a great busy season this year. As of right now, this podcast is being recorded summer of 2024, and we've had a great busy season. 2023 was really rough. There wasn't a huge busy season at all, very slow, and now we're having that great busy season. A lot of occupancies are, our storage unit occupancy across the board, with parking units excluded. We're looking at like 93% occupied average occupancy. It's pretty amazing. Even with parking's one of those times this time of year, we're expecting to see it fill up towards, August, September. People are putting the toys away, all those kinds of things. But even with the occupancy, average occupancy with parking is right around 83, 84%, which is pretty great. It's pretty fantastic. It was definitely not that way last year in 2023, and revenues were down as well. So just one of those things. Well, I can't say that. Revenues were down for a lot of people, but we were actually able to drive revenues because we again, going back to the bullet point number 1, we drove revenue even though our occupancies were declining. So again, occupancy, revenue, definitely a time and a place for both of those. But as you guys acquire your facilities, as you guys build your businesses, when things are great, don't let off the gas. Keep the gas down, pedal to the metal, all the fuel on the fire, keep the urgency, keep the hunger, and keep pushing forward, because it only lasts for so long, guys. And we want to be able to squeeze as much juice out of that as possible, right? We want to do great. We don't want to leave anything on the table. We want to put it all out there, get it all back, and be able to redeploy it. So why would you not want to grow faster, right?
Technology is the name of the game, and how you operate your facility and the efficiency at which you can operate will depend on the technology you use. Your property management system, what it allows you to do, and what you have access will determine the outcome of how that facility performs. That's why we go with Tenant Inc. with their product Hummingbird, because they are the best in class. When dealing with automation, when dealing with move-ins, customer acquisition process, improving my online acquisition process, they are bar none the best. So if you are looking to automate your facility or operate it in a best-in-class way, make sure you guys are looking at Tenant Inc. and their product Hummingbird. The link is in the description.
The next thing I wanted to share with you guys, I'm stealing this from Hormozy. Actually shared this recently on one of his podcasts, and he was talking about people struggling in finding a way to grow their musiness, right, or to do new things in their business. And one of the frameworks that he shared was the inverted framework from Munger and some of these guys, that instead of trying to think of how to grow the business, you invert the thinking and ask yourself, what would you do if you wanted to come in and just totally destroy the business as fast as possible? And we've been using this framework pretty regular on a number of different concepts. And it really helps drive those conversations, because you can say, all right, well, my goal is to increase retention. Like, we've got turnover. I want to have more employees staying with the company longer, having better people staying with the company longer. That's all there is to it. Well, how would I do that? What you can do is invert that and ask yourself, if I wanted everyone to show up the first day and want to quit, what would I have to do? How could I have the worst possible retention? It's super easy for our brains, because we're wired this way, to find the negatives, right? So it's easy to say, okay, well, I would never talk to that person. I would never communicate exactly what I wanted them to do. I would never communicate what's important to them and to the company. I would never figure out what's important to them as individuals, personally, professionally. I wouldn't get to know them at all. I wouldn't find out what makes them, want to be with the company, and I wouldn't find out what their career goals are and what their growth path, they intend their growth path to look like in their careers, all of these things. So then once you identify that list of the best ways possible to destroy the thing that you're actually wanting to improve, you can then just invert it and say, okay, well, I need to reach out to this person. I need to communicate this way. I need to implement a process to meet with these people on a regular basis and track these things to make sure that I'm providing the opportunities for growth, that I'm providing the communication for them to do their job successfully, that I'm providing the resources for them to do their job successfully. All of those different things. So it makes it really easy to identify the good by identifying the bad. So take that for what it's worth. Definitely try it out with any growth goals that you might have for you, your company, whether it's just you or a team of people. Super, super helpful. Really key there. Next up, I wanted to share with you guys another piece that I had taken from Hormozy years ago, and it's the more, better than new framework. And he talks about, you want to, instead of everybody just going out and trying to do the new thing, right? It's easy to get stuck at certain problems and think, well, I'll just go and do this other thing, or I'll just do that. For one, you want to solve the problems, not just go and do something different. But two, instead of just trying to think of something new to do, because we all want to do something new, but so often the new stuff is just a total time suck. We don't have a proven track record of whether or not that new thing actually works the way that we think it will, or assume that it will, especially, if we don't have coaches, people helping us out, providing that direction to us that have been there, done that before, in all of those aspects. But what really helps is taking a step back and saying, okay, instead of taking all of this time and effort and energy to identify this new thing, to build the processes, to build the training, all of the time and effort and energy to invest in that thing. What if we just took all of that effort and resource and allocated it to something that is working right now today and just 10x one thing that already works? Why would we not do that? So that's one of the things that I like to remind our team every now and then is let's do better and let's do more. And then maybe we can look at some new stuff, later on down the road. Again, this isn't an absolute. There's very few absolutes. There's a time and a place for doing new things, absolutely. But however, 90% of the time, take a step back, look at what's working, and do more of that. Simple as that. It's easy to, day in and day out, get caught up in all the new shiny things. We're going to conventions, we're meeting all the new people and all the new tech and all the new tools, all the things. But at the end of the day, do you really need that thing? Maybe not. Maybe you do. But just something to plug into your analysis of when your team's approaching you and looking at those things. A little bonus tip on that too. When the team is coming to you or when people were coming to you or sharing ideas, whatever that is, and saying, hey, we should do this thing that we're not doing today. One of the great ways to approach that is asking what that would look like. Tell me, how would we do that? And what would that look like? And have them explain it to you in a way that shows that they've really outlined in their mind and in front of you, not only the concept, but actually how it would be deployed. Well, what does that really look like? And how would we achieve that? That's one of those things that I love to respond with because it really helps drive the buy-in and the ownership. I'm not taking on people's monkeys, so to speak. If you guys haven't heard the term, taking monkeys is somebody coming and giving you their problem, right? And I can't remember where I've stole that from. I've heard it from somewhere, but again, use those mentors. They give you all the good tidbits and pieces. And just one of those things that I found that works really good, talking about new stuff. So do more, do better, than do new. Love that approach. The next thing I wanted to share is a lot of times too, we want to get into an industry or a business, and I think storage is no different. And we want to get in and we want to have all the new shiny stuff. We want to have the best looking this or the best looking that or the amazing office or all these different things. But a lot of times, especially us, we buy and improve, right? We have a value add strategy. And sometimes up front, there's the budget to be able to go in and just improve whatever aspect of the facility, whether it's an office remodel or an expansion or new buildings of some kind or painting buildings or whatever it is to facelift the facility. Asphalt's another really good one. Those things really help drive the curb appeal. Then also the functional aspect, putting in new gates, putting in new security systems, those different things. Those really improve the value of the facility, both real and perceived by the customer. And it really, really helps drive your occupancies and revenue. But if you don't have upfront, let's say at acquisition, you don't have it in the budget, your numbers aren't going to work if you go and spend $30,000 on new cameras. Your budget's not going to work if you go and spend $30,000 on asphalt. Your budget's not going to work if you go and spend whatever, right? If you can't do those things immediately, there are still things that you can do. If you can't improve the product, improve the process. Make the process better, make the process faster, make the process more convenient. Do those things first, and then get the revenue to then be able to go and get those different improvements done that you want to see at the facility, to be able to compete with other competitors that maybe you're not competing with today, or to be able to drive and justify the revenues and the rate increases and those different things that you're providing your consumers. So something to definitely consider as you acquire a facility. I know anytime, personally that I've wanted to start a business or do something, I want to have everything at once, right? But we have to take a step back and realize that, again, we're in the long game. This isn't something that's going to happen overnight. We need to get in the facility. We need to make numbers work. We need to actually drive revenue. It has to be a successful business. Then we can start reinvesting our cash flow into those improvements. So you might not have all the shiny new stuff today, but hey, don't worry, you'll get there. Save up for it. Get it done that way, or maybe even at a refi, right? You can plan for 3 years later down the road, pull the capital out, redeploy it, improve the facility, maybe go buy another new one, do the same thing there. Remember, take your time. Next one I want to talk about, for those of you with employees, I think it's commonplace for us to make assumptions a lot of times that, hey, this is really important to us as a company, so everybody just knows it. We have it in the training when people are hired. Everybody knows that this one thing is really, really important. They know what the standard is on that, and we don't have to worry about it. I wish in a perfect world that that would be the case, but it is absolutely not. We work with human beings, and human beings are forgetful. They're crazy sometimes. And we have to, as people and as managers, have to really keep an eye on and track the individuals and what's important. We need to constantly be communicating with them what's important, what the expectations are, tracking those things. And we like to say around here, you know, what's not being managed or what's not being tracked isn't getting done. And if you were going to assume something, I would encourage you to assume that if you're not looking at that regularly, if you're not looking at that metric, if you're not looking at that performance objective or that goal or that execution, you're not getting eyes on your facility. Those things, if it's not being tracked or it's not being managed, you can almost guarantee that it's not going to get done. And are people just out there trying to be malicious and not do their jobs? No. But at the end of the day, people do get complacent. They get comfortable. They get forgetful. You know, they get busy. They have, you know, different things that they think might be more of a priority than what truly is a priority. They might think that being out on the facility and pulling some weeds is more of a priority than being in and following up on leads and you know, answering the phone. And again, there might be a time and a place for that. But again, for you to be able to convey what those priorities are, what the metrics are that matter to you, to the company, to the individual, for them and their facility to succeed, super, super important. Follow up on them regularly. Again, kind of talked a little bit about employee retention. That's another piece there, that being able to communicate those things and track them well over time is super, super important. And then also, I've got that HR like bug in my ear saying that, you know, at some point in time too, if it ever comes to it, hopefully not. Hopefully you're connecting with your employees and coaching and guiding. But let's say you do have to terminate someone or provide someone some corrective action of some kind or a write-up of some kind, that you do have that information and documentation to say, hey, look, we said, you know, that occupancy is really important, or that lead follow-up is really important here, and this is what the expectation is. So you're here, and then but you're down here. So how do we get you to this? And then, you know, again, maybe you meet, you know, a week later, a month later, whatever it is, and performance has improved or it hasn't. And again, you have that framework to go back and reference, that documentation to look at and say, you're succeeding or you're not. So that's really, really important, not only to make sure that things get done, but that things are being tracked, documented, all of that. So very, very important.
Right now, financing for real estate is really hard, even for self-storage. The markets are very challenging. Live Oak Bank is a specialist in financing for self-storage, including SBA loans. They are one of the leaders in financing all sorts of deals and deal size. We trust Live Oak Bank for their specialty in self-storage, their unique approach, and how they help their customers go through the process so there's no surprises. That in itself is a testament to their exceptional service and support. So whether you're looking to acquire, build, or expand a storage facility, Live Oak Bank has to be #1 on your list to call. Click the link below right now so you can experience the difference that a dedicated self-storage partner can really make.
Next up, something super important to keep on your radar. Do not be getting bottlenecked. Don't have single points of failure. They are the worst thing in the world, and they will destroy you and your company in a snap of a finger. And one of the acronyms that we like to use, actually took this from I think it was the Army, from one of the military branches, but it's called PACE. It's an acronym we all know and understand how much the military loves their acronyms. But PACE stands for Primary, Alternate, Contingency, Emergency. And so what this is it's a planning framework for you to plan. Okay, what's our primary course of action? What's the alternate course of action? What's the contingency if something doesn't really go as planned? And what's the, oh crap, emergency action plan, like hit the red button time. So it really helps too when you're making plans, you're coordinating efforts, you're building out roles in the company, or you're building a new process. Let's say, what is that primary course of action? What's the alternate? What's the contingency? And what's our emergency here? We've got facilities located in the Midwest. Let's say there's tornadoes and things, right? What's our, let's say a tornado warning comes out. Again, go through that PACE process. Building out policies. What's the PACE process? It's a really good process to go through and analyze what those look like. It's a good exercise too, to be able to build those policies and processes in a way that allows some really in-depth thought. And it's not just something that's getting thrown together. And how do you actually cover the bases, right? Because once you start looking at those things, you're not just going to be like, oh, hey, yeah, Bob, you're going to do all of that. And nobody else on the team knows what Bob does, how he does it, where all of his information is located, what resources he uses, logins for all those resources, all those things. And let's say, Bob decides that he's going to disappear and go to South America and live out his days in retirement, or I don't know, let's think of some other crazy story that you can think of. What happens when somebody just disappears from your team? And you want to make sure and have those bases covered, again, not only for yourself, but for the value of your company, of your employees, of your investors. You got to have the bases covered. So PACE is an awesome, awesome framework to work from. Next up, I want to talk about, again, I mean, we're talking storage, so it's not all super sexy to begin with, but the key to retail is in the detail. We like to say, it's kind of like a little catchy phrase, but it might seem kind of crazy to some of our, especially newer employees that are just getting the lay of the land and seeing how we operate and how we function. But we look at all of our facilities in very minute and granular detail. We look at and audit semi-regularly what the facilities look like from an administrative standpoint and a physical standpoint. Are all the boxes being checked consistently every day? Yes or no? And it can sound and look pretty crazy sometimes, looking at, some of the photos received from, that we get in our audits and we review with our employees on site. And we look at something and say, hey, yeah, there was some dust on the refrigerator. Or, hey, yeah, there was some dust on the baseboard. Or, hey, yeah, your open sign had a little bit of, moisture on it or something. Or your windows weren't super clean that day or whatever it was. And some of those things, there might be a good reason for some of it. It's like, oh, yeah, we had a windstorm, so the windows were dirty. But a lot of times just having that focus and having that conversation on those details and getting that granular, there's an immeasurable amount of value for you as an operator, as an investor, to drive, again, that occupancy and revenue for your facility by focusing on those key and minute details. And talking about how competitive self-storage has gotten over the past several years in a lot of these different markets that we're in, that customer experience and perceived value, that cleanliness, those things are absolutely imperative. And it's one of those things that we can control. And I know we talk about some of these things on the podcast about macroeconomic elements and the microeconomic elements and some of these things. And a lot of times it comes down to what we can control and what we can't. And we focus on what we can control. How the facility looks, how the facility feels, that's all stuff that we can control and do control. So go to your facilities regularly, have someone else go to the facilities regularly and report back to you on what things look like, how things are. Look at your administrative elements of the facility. Make sure all the boxes are being checked on your move-ins, on your delinquencies, on your auctions, all of those different aspects of running your facility. You have to make sure that those are being done to the best possible degree, because you don't want to have any issues pop up because that one time that the lease wasn't signed correctly, or that you missed a driver's license on something on the lease, or that the facility hadn't been mowed for 3 weeks because the employee on site didn't really care and the vendor decided that he wasn't going to do it anymore, or contractor. That's the one time that, you had a contractor show up that was going to get 40 units because they got a big project coming to town or something. That's going to be there for 2 years. Those different things, I mean, it's amazing how opportunity strikes, and it's amazing how Murphy's Law also seems to strike, a lot of times. So just make sure you've got focus and attention on those details that you can control them. manage them, make sure they're getting done. Do not get away from that at all. Last but not least, I wanted to share this last bit of advice with you guys. And I alluded to this in the beginning and through part of the podcast here, but I wanted to talk to you guys about the importance of not going it alone. You guys have to find people to do this with. Whether it's your investors, whether it's partners, whether it's joining groups like Self-Storage Income, or it's attending events like the Self-Storage Income live event happening here, in September. It's one of those things that you guys have to do. Connect with your local cities, connect with other operators. It doesn't even have to be like some paid event or group or any of those things. Just get into the industry, get associated with those people. Talk to them, see what they're seeing. And a prime example of this is, we've had a really great busy season this year in 2024. In the month of July here, we've actually seen our net move-ins. So that's our move-ins versus our move-outs and what's left over. What's the difference between those? Is it positive? Is it negative? And we were seeing just hundreds and hundreds of net positive move-ins, where now we're seeing a lot less here in the month of July. And when you see those things, even though we have 28 properties and so on and so forth, and we see those things, it makes you wonder, okay, well, is there something that we're doing, or what exactly are we seeing? And so we have a number of operators who have, collectively hundreds of stores. When we're talking to these people and they're seeing the same exact thing, they're saying, hey, yeah, it looks like rates are changing really, dramatically over here, or demand looks like it's dropping here just collectively across the industry, or it looks like the REITs are doing X, Y, and Z, and it's, we're competing in this way. That really gives us, I guess it really reassures us. It gives us some reassurance. And then also it helps identify what the course of action should be, and what other courses of action other people are taking and how they're solving those problems. And having those resources in your corner are extremely important to your success. You cannot do it alone. You should not do it alone. So reach out to those people, connect with them, and again, build that network of successful people in your corner that can help guide you into the future and grow your company, grow your business, and help make sure you're successful. Why would you not want that, right? So with that said, those are the tidbits I wanted to share with you guys today. A couple other bonus pieces here also that I want to hit on is we've actually got in the description a couple links. The first link is going to be a link to a survey for you guys, for all our listeners. And what I want you guys to do, we do this podcast for free. We come out here, we share all this information for you guys. If you can do us a solid, go hit that link for the survey. Take the survey for us and let us know what you want to hear more of. How can we make this podcast better? What information are you really looking for? Ask your questions. Get us all the information that you can as far as what you like, what you dislike, so we can help tailor these episodes to exactly what you want to hear. So go to that link, click that for us, get that survey, just a couple minutes of your time. We would greatly appreciate it. Please do so. And then also, for any of you out there listening who have facilities, who have storage experience, if you would actually like to join us on the podcast here, go ahead and there's a second link there. Click that apply link and you can actually apply to join AJ and myself on the podcast and share your knowledge, share your experience, whether it's your first facility, whether you have a plethora of facilities under your belt. We would love to hear from you guys. So if you have any facilities, we'd love to connect with you. Go hit that apply link, and we look forward to connecting with you guys. Thanks so much for listening. As always, the support has just been incredible over the years. You guys keep up all the awesome work out there. Keep up the great connection with us here on the podcast and on social media and on YouTube. It's been really incredible to see. Thank you guys so much. We'll catch you next time.